So my name is Antje Reutsch, and I define myself as an artist mostly. I started out being a goldsmith. I went through goldsmith training in Germany. I did an apprenticeship for 3.5 years, almost 4. And right after that I came actually here to work with Michael Good, working on the anticlastic raising. That's a special jewelry technique, and I can tell a little bit more while I'm doing a little demo about it. But that was 1988 that I came over to Maine directly here. And so I worked with Michael for quite some time and started in 1999. I started massage training just because sitting at the bench, I started my back felt a little tight, and so I went through that to learn more about how my body works, how I can take better care of myself. And so ever since then I did sort of, half massage or more goldsmithing and then a little bit massage, and then it shifted. And in 2005 I went to New York City for 7 months, taking a break from Michael Good and just exploring the world and the art world. And it was great being in New York City. I did some more massage training or shiatsu training there at the Ohashi Institute. So massage and jewelry was always sort of, going a little bit back and forth. I did both in New York. And coming back, I decided to give it a try to just be my own person and do sculpture work and more jewelry and massage. So it's a mix ever since. And and I struggled with that a little bit. I wasn't quite sure, should I put more attention into massage work or more attention into sculpture or jewelry. I wasn't quite sure what my calling was. And it seems like in the last 2 years I sort of have come to the conclusion that it's all the same. What I'm trying to work with my sculpture is to really, I think the viewer of a sculpture or the toucher of a sculpture or the wearer of jewelry resonates with what I'm doing. And I can see it when I hand somebody a little sculpture and they say, it looked great, but it just feels so, it really resonates when you touch it and when you put it in your hand. So the sensation of touch is really important. And I feel it connects directly to the heart. And I think the same happens through massage. The receiver is getting put in touch with their own body again and with their own heart. So that's sort of ideally what I'm working on. And so these both connect in that regard. But I'll show you a little bit here about the first sculptures I started right after coming from New York. I just wanted to try the process of bronze casting, because all the resources were in New York and plenty casters. So I started out with something that was small, and I just could go through the process easily. I came up with these shapes. It's the same shape on both sides. So, and I did many variations of these type of shapes. This is also a shape that is the same on both sides. So they fit together like waves, or and they're inspired by waves or flowers emerging or rolling out in the spring, unfolding, and these were always made, from a piece of clay or wax or plastiline, and then I'll make a mold out of them and cast wax into the mold, and then bring the waxes to the caster, and they cast it into bronze. So I just always started to play with a piece of wax or something sitting in the winter next to the stove in the living room, and just having fun. So, and these are just meant to be played with and held, and these are sitting here in the cold studio, so they're a little cool, but once you have them in your hand and warm them up, they're really
cold.
Yeah, they're really nice, and
they're kind of touch sculptures.
Yeah, and I call them palm sculptures. And you can also carry them with you. Like when I had art openings, I always carried one in my pocket so it was nice and warm. Mm-hmm. And I would, pull it out and give it to somebody here, because we are trained to not touch art in museums. So it's, so the bronze, the patina wears off a little bit after touching so many times, but, that's part of the aging process, and otherwise, if somebody is upset that their patina wears off, you can always put a new patina on. So,
but there's a patina that wears out.
Right. That's this coating here. It's a chemical reaction. So just what the difference in color, that's what makes the patina. And I don't have too many different examples here. But you can make black patinas and green patinas, and it's just the chemical reaction on the surface of the bronze. So, but after having these small pieces, I wanted to go bigger, and the only piece I have here is this piece here, and this I had originally made in clay, and I really liked it, and wanted to make it into bronze. And the nice thing about sculpture is, and maybe also the challenging part, that from every angle you have a different view. When you have a picture, you have one view, and with a sculpture you just can walk around it, or if you have like a sculpture this size, a table size, you could put it on a Lazy Susan and turn it a degree every day, so you get to, throughout the year, you can see the whole sculpture. So that's really what excited me to do bigger pieces, but this is pretty heavy. That's like, I don't know.
Is it solid or is it?
No, it's hollow. Yeah. It still is, very heavy. So, and it is getting very expensive to cast those. So I was starting to feel a little limited in that regard, how big I could go. And the next idea was I was building an amateur for a plaster sculpture. I figured I'll go bigger in plaster. And I was building the amateur, which was very much like this. And I thought, well, this works. You can see the shape, you can see the form, and with bronze that would be all filled out here. But it's sort of like a sketch versus a painting. There is
beautiful.
Something that still works. And so I knew I could do this much bigger. So I made this particular piece. I think it's like 5 feet tall. And then I just went wild and I built an 8-foot tall piece and 2 8-foot tall pieces. And so I made a bunch of those just out of copper tubing, and the bigger, this piece I have, like, it's maybe 2 feet in diameter, and I made one that was 3 feet. So it's, with this I could go bigger. That was really exciting.
You made that one bigger too.
Yeah. And then I went with steel rod, because once you get past 5 feet with a copper, it is a little delicate. And so just to have it outside, even if a big bird flies on it, that might be, if it's too springy, and heavy snow might push it over. So anyway, steel felt like the right thing. And then I did out of steel tubing some big pieces. That was exciting in that regard, as I actually had to ask for help because I couldn't do it by myself. And that was a really great discovery to find that it was, first of all, people were willing to help and really excited to be part of a project. And also just the act of collaboration was getting really important for me. And that was a nice byproduct of that.
Community collaboration.
Right.
They go together.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so I did a show at Merry Spring. That was in 2009. And I actually had asked them in November of 2008 if they were interested in a show. And they said, well, we'll put on a show. And so I had the winter and the spring to build. I think I built 8 sculptures for that show. And I was very motivated. And the last few months was like being out in the driveway, bending the heavy steel. So that was all, done by just handwork. And I had learned to weld, and so I was welding the steel together. That was great fun to do that. And here is like one of the bigger pieces that was hanging in the gazebo. So that was hanging in the gazebo. And this is here the copper tubing that I was talking about.
Oh yes, it spins in the wind.
Yeah, and it didn't spin as easily as I had hoped. I put a little, I think there is still just too much friction, and I'm not an engineer, so that's like one of my frustrations. I don't quite know the technical stuff to make it all work properly, but
It's called a prototype.
right. Well, it worked until we let it hang through the winter, and I think in one storm it actually got dislodged and got the wire snapped. So, but I straightened it all back out, and it's waiting for a new home. I don't want to put it outside anymore. This membrane is actually done with cow gut, and the smaller ones are made out of sausage casing, so pig gut. So I was really excited about the prospect of covering, doing the linear work, and then using some solid pieces. You get some different
I'll bring it out here so the background is. Yeah. And that blows in the wind too.
Yeah,
It's
that
a
can.
windmobile or
Right.
a wind sculpture.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't quite mastered the finish of this. This is a little bit. It attracts the moisture a little bit too much, so I haven't found a membrane that will keep the moisture totally out. So
Could be
this is.
an inside sculpture too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even inside, if it's a really humid day, you're still gonna have a problem. But yeah, so these are those pieces, and being a jeweler, I always have to work with earrings, so you have a left and a right shape. So that's when this came about. I always played with earring shapes, and so I made this little. Should I hold it next to? So I had. Well, this is pretty much it, but you can play with it and find all kinds of variations that look really cool and interesting. So I'll have a lot of fun with something like that. So there are a lot of variations that you can do just with this shape. So
Okay.
I thought when you have these sculptures, not everybody is interested in having their own sculpture, plus, they're through the casting process, they're maybe out of the price range for some people. I decided to go and make these as jewelry pieces. So I made little pendants. So this is the same shape.
Medallion.
Yeah. Sort of like a little talisman that you can hang, and when you wear them, they are still big enough that you can play with them. You can still touch them.
Mm-hmm.
And I made these out of bronze. I don't have a bronze piece here right now, but these are
Touching is phenomenal
really,
touch.
right.
It's very important, the relationship.
Yeah, touching is really important, and this is basically the same piece, just a little reduced in dramaticness. And then you can, put a few stones in there, so do the regular jewelry thing with that. But and this is the other piece there.
So none of your pieces have front or back. They all have.
That's
all
true.
A diorama or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a different shape that I have not made into a regular sculpture. So sometimes the jewelry can be my prototypes as well. So, yeah. So, but all these pieces need to be cast. And I started to teach metalsmith techniques, the adult ed. have asked me for a long time, can you teach a class? And I was always sort of resisting, but I started teaching forging techniques, which is, this is a forged bracelet.
How is it forged by, you mean cast?
No, this is just using a metal rod and changing the diameter by hammering it. So if this was a round rod, so I made it square, but just by hammering, and this is flattened just by hammering it, so it gets wider and flatter, because you have still the same mass of, metal. So that's just changed by hammering on an anvil. So, and this is a copper piece, and I did the same. I experimented with, this is niobium. It's much lighter. This is quite a bit heavier. And this is a sort of a similar metal like titanium, so it's a light metal. But somebody in the class asked me, they wanted to do some fold forming, which is something like that. So I decided, why not all try it, and we did a class in fold forming. This means that the metal is folded first, then hammered, forged out, and then opened back up again, and you end up with all these interesting hammer marks. And I decided to leave them and accentuate them just by rubbing the highlights. So you get the little zebra look. And you can fold the metal all kinds of different ways and get different results. This is all made out of one piece of metal. And then you can, yeah, and then you can just make earrings, nice little shapes. They look really nice on dangly pieces. And this is a little bit more reminiscent of what I used to do at Michael Goods. It's playing with, it was also made by hammering and shaping the metal. So this is like, these fold form pieces are made out of flat sheet, and they're folded and hammered and stretched, and that's very similar to what we did at Michael Goods. It's you still stretch the metal and compress other ways. And
like forging, that's what he forges?
Well, it's he doesn't do it so dramatically. It's just minutely stretched, and because you work with a flat sheet, you don't want to have the diameter shrink that much more. So you try to keep the same diameter, but you stretch the metal and compress it. So it's not as much as, forging. You really change the diameter from round to square to flat. And with fold forming, you just work with a flat sheet. You don't want to lose too much of the mass. And I can, do a few demonstrations of both. And here one difference with the fold forming, and I can show that to you. When you bend a piece of metal, you can either hammer on the bent crease, which is the shape that you get here, or when you hammer on the open side, you get this shape. So one looks, this looks more like a ram's horn or something like that. It's a little different shape than these more open pieces.
These are studies for sculpture, or they are sculpture?
Well, these, you can use that as a sculpture, put that in your on your coffee table or desk. And these can be done bigger too. So I can take a longer strip and a wider piece of copper and hammer it much longer. And I can probably do them comfortably, maybe 2 feet across. And then I need to go to a heavier gauge. Otherwise, if you do something, they can be pretty
Flimsy.
well, flimsy, or they can have just some inner life to them, which can be really cool. But you want to make sure you don't, this is a little bit more stable. And so to go much bigger, I would have to go with heavier material, and it's just not as readily available around here, but I can order it.
Like a snake.
Yeah. So in the last 2 years I have studied more massage training, and I went and got introduced to phenomenal touch. And so I've been going through the classes and practicing it, and now I'm going into the next round to be going into teacher training. So I want to make sure that that technique is being spread a little bit further, and people get to use it and experience it much more.
And what's it called?
It's Phenomenal Touch.
Phenomenal Touch.
And I'm just thinking about it because the founder of the Phenomenal Touch, Leslie Bruder in Colorado, she got very excited by these pieces and thought, wow, it's exactly like Phenomenal Touch. It's like the shape frozen in this copper, what you do with the body on the table. So it's all very fluid and trying to not be constrained by the table, but moving a person sort of more like when you lay on the beach in the waves. And so it was just really nice to see her respond to these shapes and just recognize the similarity. It was really cool. And so she's using one of my sculptures for her new logo. So that's going to be worked on right now. So that was exciting.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Phenomenal
So
touch.
it's just all
I want to get into this already. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the inquiry.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to describe, but it's like really great. Yeah.
For you to give it to as a massage?
It's actually both. It's really wonderful to receive it and be just moved on the table, and just some people describe it as having yoga done to you. So you go into some deep stretches, and I facilitate that, or I work with gravity, pulling somebody sideways, or a little bit off the table, and so it's and that stretches the inner core, so you feel really deeply worked and stretched, and that's another thing, connecting you with the heart. Yeah.
Cool.
So I mentioned I wanted to do a plaster piece that was bigger.
Yeah.
And so I actually did this shape first. I did one out of plaster that was like maybe, I think it was 17 inches in diameter, which
Made
came
out of
out of plaster.
plastic.
So I just built a styrofoam core and built plaster onto it, and that was great. But so I thought I can do any of these pieces, and so I cast little plaster. You know, these are made out of plaster, and I just mounted them. And so, if you take them out of context and take my hand away, you can envision, you know, see how they could be maybe 3 feet across, sitting on a big rock outside.
Cast in
That probably would have to be in cement or something like that,
bronze.
or bronze, right? So anyway, I played with just using these models. I look at any of these, you know, as just oops, there you see how light it is. But they can be all maquettes for bigger pieces. Got a little bit, so it's anyway. You get the idea. So my vision is always to go bigger, and so that's
Bigger and bigger and bigger.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to have a public
Huge.
sculpture. You know, you can something like that. You can do that like 9 feet across, and you can climb up on that and lay on that spot. I would love sculptures to be able to be interacted with people. You gotta, you know, if it's that big, you have to be able to climb onto it and sit on it and just have your picnic there. I don't know. It's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's
Okay.
an addition.